If you're new to crystals, one of the biggest questions you might have is how does crystal energy actually work? And usually, right behind that question is another one I get. Is this science? Is this psychology? Or is this just spiritual woo woo? And the answer might surprise you because honestly, it's a little bit of all three. And it's important to talk about that really clearly and responsibly. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. If you're new here, I'm Bella from Bella Luna Crystals. And this is That Crystal Show. I like talking about rocks, and I've owned my own crystal business for over 12 years. I've been working with crystals for over 20 years. Gosh, I feel old. And by popular request from my community, I'm sharing all my knowledge for free here on YouTube. So if you like learning about the woo woo, a little bit of science, or even how to spot fake crystals, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Before we go any further, I do want to be really clear. We are both a physical body and a spiritual, energetic being. Crystals work on the energetic and spiritual level. And what happens there can sometimes influence how we feel emotionally or physically. But at the same time, we should never use crystals to replace proper medical or mental health treatment that our physical body and our nervous system might need. So always remember that they are meant to be supportive tools, not a substitute for professional care, despite how I see some people on social media recommending them for medical care. You will never see that here at Bella Luna, and those people are often scammers. That's the best way I can say it. So let's talk about the science question really honestly. Both my master's and bachelor's degrees are science degrees, and I have a very logical thought process. And I don't know how many hours I have thought about using the scientific method as a way to validate crystal energy, but I just can't find a good controlled way to go about it. If you have one, let me know. I've been thinking about it for a while. The scientific method is really designed to test things that are measurable, repeatable, observable under controlled conditions, and crystal metaphysical energy doesn't neatly fit into that framework. There isn't an agreed upon way to measure intention or meaning because it's so subjective and it's such a unique experience to each individual. It certainly doesn't mean those experiences aren't real. It means they're really difficult to test with current scientific tools. So when people say there's no scientific proof that crystals work, that's largely true. But it's important to remember why that is. And it's because the experiences are hard to measure because it's subjective and it's unique to each individual. With crystal metaphysical properties, we do have a lot of similarities in terms of what people experience working with each crystal. But again, when people say there's no science, it's a hard thing to prove. And I've genuinely thought about it. So if you have some ideas, please let me know. This is where the psychology piece really plays a role in my recommendation for how you start working with crystals. Crystals are often an anchor for your intention. Now, there is a lot of science in the field of psychology behind intention. We talk about things like self-fulfilling prophecy. And so when you hold a crystal, wear one, or place it intentionally in your space, you're engaging in a very meaningful practice, calling your intention, assigning meaning, and you have now emotional awareness. And see, those are things that we can measure from a psychological standpoint, especially if they have meaning to you. In psychology, we know in that field that symbolism, rituals, and focused attention will really influence how you feel, how your nervous system responds, that there's this consciousness about us that has that control. But most of us operate in autopilot. I'll do more videos about autopilot, but for the purpose of this video, because we're doing beginner crystals, it's just important to remember that setting an intention is stepping out of autopilot. This doesn't mean that crystals are medicine. It means that the mind-body connection is so powerful. When we talk about this concept of intention, psychology, I have to talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. And one concept that comes up when people talk about crystals is intention. And a lot of us have a practice of the intention is the most important part and everything is complementary. And I am one of those people as well. And this is where we can take a psychological framework to really help us understand how crystals support us. And now there is a very famous sociologist named Robert K. Merton. And he has a well established concept called self fulfilling prophecy. In simple terms, it's a belief or expectation is going to influence your behavior. That behavior changes the outcome, and that outcome reinforces the original behavior. So it's kind of like a form of behavior modification that you can do yourself. And this is the principle that I like to lean into when we talk about working with crystals. So, to break it down really simply, what we expect can shape what we experience. Not magically, we're not making wishes to the universe, but by a combination of our behavioral shifts, by having that intention and the energy of the crystal. Do you see the connection there? So, when you set an intention, whether through journaling, meditation, or working with the crystal, you're doing a few things psychologically. You're breaking out of that autopilot. You're directing your intention to what your desire is. You're clarifying what you want to focus on. Again, remember, most people are walking around just day by day. They don't have that honed in focus. You're increasing your awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and your behaviors. And that increased awareness, we know, can change how you respond in certain situations, how you regulate stress, how you make choices. Over time, those small shifts can really lead to real life changes and experiences, which is exactly how self fulfilling prophecy works. From my perspective, crystals act as that anchor for the intention. When you carry a crystal, when you meditate with it, or you keep it in your space, it becomes this energetic connection towards to connect you to what you're working toward, to your intention. Whether that's calming, grounding, confidence, clarity, emotional balance, better relationships, this is the first step in changing aspects of your life. This reminder does things like interrupt your stress patterns, encourage mindful pauses, supports your nervous system regulation, and reinforces your intentional behavior. Again, this doesn't mean crystals are medicine. It means they support a psychological process that we already know exists. And lastly, while we're wrapping up this intention piece and self fulfilling prophecy, it doesn't mean we can think away illnesses, trauma, or mental health conditions. Of course, we still require appropriate care for those for our physical body, but attention works amazingly well as a supportive component. Not when it's used to deny or bypass real needs. I don't think by thinking positive, you can think away depression. I don't think with crystals, you can remove depression, but you can help yourself have intentions to help your symptoms feel better. Maybe you're going to work with a crystal like carnelian. It's associated with confidence and energy. And every day you take your walk, your 30-minute walk with your carnelian pocket, and you tune in the carnelian crystal in your pocket and you tune into that carnelian energy. And that innately might help the symptoms that you're experiencing with some of your mental health conditions. Of course, always refer to a medical professional for advice for that. But we do know that getting outside and walking is really helpful clinically for things like depression. And the crystal can complement that. And that's how we want the crystals incorporated into the work that we're doing. But of course, I will talk about the fun stuff, like trying to attract more money, trying to attract maybe a relationship partner. We'll go into that too. Now, intention always is going to work best when it is supportive. So for beginners, today we're just going to talk about intention being your starting point, not about forcing outcomes. Whenever you do any energetic work, you want to be real specific, but you also want to be open to the outcome. Okay. The main thing where people get hung up on energetic work is they're focused on a very specific outcome instead of their highest good. Sometimes those things align, sometimes they don't. So when you're starting out, you want to make sure that the first things you do is you're choosing awareness over autopilot. You're already choosing that by watching this video. You have crystals that are going to support that. And you have consistency. This is the main piece. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for our brain to really shift how we're thinking, our processes, or change a behavior, or build a new habit. And crystals are one of the tools I recommend you to help you remember that. Crystals are great for that, as well as financial abundance, relationships, all the good things. From a nervous system perspective, working with crystals can support you slowing down, grounding. I know a lot of people joke, like, go out and touch grass, but please go out and touch some grass, okay? And hold your crystals. Breath awareness, connection to breath is a huge connection to nervous system regulation. This would include things like meditations. A lot of people get a little nervous about meditation. They're like, oh, I can't sit, I can't clear my mind. It's not about that. Find a nice guided meditation here on YouTube you like. Keep it short, keep it sweet. Practice helps you connect better and faster in meditation. When someone pauses, focuses, and engages their energy with something intentionally, our nervous system starts to shift out of our old patterns, shifts out of stress mode. Crystals then become that tool for regulation, not because they're overriding biology, but because they work with it. Okay. Spiritually, many people, myself included, believe we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Crystals in that system don't work on the physical body directly. They work with the energetic and symbolic layers of our experience. So, whenever crystals are discussed, there are a few common reactions you'll hear, especially from people who don't like or believe in them. And if that's you, this video is not for you, and that's okay. You don't have to. I always encourage you when you're starting out, don't try to force people to believe what you believe about crystals. If they're either not ready for it, it's just not their jam, and that's okay. I don't like football, so I'm glad people don't force me to watch football. It's just some people are into it and some people are not, and that's okay. So some things that people often say are crystals are fake. There are a lot of fake crystals, but they're referring to energetically, that it's a placebo. There's no science. People are using rocks instead of medicine. That is perpetuated by scammers who try to sell expensive, overpriced crystals as a miracle cure for usually relationships or money. But don't worry, I'm going to teach you about those things so you won't get ripped off. And some of these concerns are very real and valid, especially around health misinformation, which is my biggest, like, ugh, it's just like it gives those of us who are legit a bad vibe when people are out there selling $3,000 worth of crystals to someone to try to cure a medical condition. And that's just not how it works. Okay. It's your energetic body, not your physical body. So let's talk about these misconceptions. Crystals replace medical care. We've talked about this. No, do not replace medical care. Crystals are always complementary, not a replacement. There's no science, so it's meaningless. Science isn't designed to measure meaning, symbolism, or subjective inner experiences. It's just not set up for that. Psychology and neuroscience clearly shows that attention, belief, and ritual influence, which crystals become a ritual, actually are going to affect the nervous system states. It doesn't turn crystals into a magical cure, but it explains why people experience real effects from their work with crystals. The placebo one, it doesn't mean it's fake. It means that our mind and body are connected. And we see these same effects in meditation, mindfulness, breath work, and ritual practices across cultures. Crystals can serve as a tool for grounding and for focus, which support emotional regulation. That's what we all need, right? We all need a little emotional regulation. I'll add this because it really matters if you're going to be following my channel. I hold a master's of science. My background is rooted in evidence-based thinking. I have wrote hundreds of page research-backed papers. From a psychological perspective, we know the mind and nervous system respond to meaning, symbolism, attention, and intention. And so it explains why people can experience real psychological and emotional effects, even when the mechanism isn't fully measurable by science. So you got to be okay with that if you're going to hang out here, okay? And understanding that nuance is not saying we're rejecting science. Science has a huge component of our health and our wellness and our research we put into society. It's very important. We're not rejecting that. So being clear with that, but honoring that not everything can be measured. Okay. It's important to recognize. So for beginners, here's the most responsible way to understand crystals. Crystals can support your intention, encourage mindfulness, help regulate emotional stress, act as a symbolic tool for personal and spiritual growth. They are supportive. All right. So you don't have to reject science to work with crystals. You don't need extreme beliefs, and you don't need to make exaggerated claims. You can hold space for science, psychology, and spiritual meaning, all at the same time. If crystals help you feel calmer, more grounded, and more intentional, that experience you have is valid. There's a lot of other experiences people have. If you want to share them below, go for it. So, now, how long have I been talking? Way too long. Let's go into the actual practice now that we understand a little background. So, what you really want to do when you're starting to work with crystals as a beginner is take it step by step. Step one, you want to choose your crystals. Now, there's another reverse practice once you get more advanced where you have your intention and you select the crystal based on that intention. But today, because you're just starting out, you're clean, you're fresh, you're new, I want you to first go to the crystal you're attracted to. So when you're choosing this crystal, if you're at a crystal shop or if you've got some crystals at home, I always recommend just starting with what you have. You bought them for a reason and lay them out, have the crystals to look at, or go into the crystal shop and see what you feel you are drawn to. For most people, this is ironic. They are first drawn towards amethyst, rose quartz, or quartz. And what's interesting about this is amethyst is associated with being open to spirituality and crystal energy, while rose quartz is often associated with self-care. And quartz is that master-like energy, cleanser and clearer. So they're really the perfect combo for beginners. They're super affordable. For less than $5, you can get all three of these in a tumble. You don't need a giant crystal. Tumbles are sufficient when you're starting out. If you cannot afford the big, beautiful crystals, you will want them eventually if you get into crystals. But starting out, keep it simple. Again, it might just be like this visual pull. It might be an emotional pull. It might not make logical sense at all, and that's okay. But that's what I want you to do. From a psychological standpoint, attention matters. If a crystal catches your eye, it catches your attention, you're more likely to engage with it intentionally. And intention is a big part of how these practices work. Number two, use those metaphysical meanings as a guide, not a rule book. Crystals are often associated with metaphysical meanings. You can find books on this. I'm writing a book on this. Things like grounding, calming, protection. And these meanings are best understood as guides, not like Bible. Like there's one called the Crystal Bible. I don't like that wording because it's not some kind of rule book to follow. It's just a guide for you. They're based on historical symbolism, some cultural traditions, and often collective experiences. They're not laws, they're not guarantees. If a crystal traditionally associated with calming helps you feel focused instead, that does not mean you're doing it wrong. Let the meanings inform your practice. Don't let them limit your experiences. Your relationship with your crystals is personal, so always tune into what you are feeling. Step three, some simple ways to work with crystals daily. You don't need an elaborate rituals, special setups to work with crystals. Eventually, you'll work there probably to grids, and we'll talk about grids here. I do like to cleanse my crystals before using them. Not everyone does this, and use smoke for setting an intention. I don't use white sage here. I do predominantly use incense. I do not have any indigenous America's ancestry, and I think the best way when you're cleansing crystals is to, if you're going to use smoke, is to research your heritage and see what your ancestors may have used. And I just feel like it's a stronger connection than just using white sage, which if you're from California, or even if not, you might not be aware that white sage is often poached. It is not endangered, but it is at risk of being endangered. So we just don't recommend it here. Plenty of other stuff to use that's cheap, easy to find. Incense you can find everywhere. You can also cleanse them with sound, with the singing bowls, your voice. Those all work too. I don't recommend water unless you really know the crystal. Silicates like amethyst, rose quartz, clear quartz, fine in water, but not all crystals are fine in water. So it's not like a one size fits all for water cleansing. So the first thing I will do is cleanse the crystal. I'm going to let the smoke kind of float around the crystal while I am thinking about my intention and what my goal is from working with this crystal. So that's my first step. Then I'll move into, based on that intention, what I want to do with it. Do I want to carry it with me?
Do I want to keep it in my pocket, my purse, my bra, my bag? Some people like to tuck smaller stones into their bras, pockets, purse, wallet, and just so you have it on you daily. Some people will wear jewelry, could be a bracelet or a necklace, whatever works for you. Whatever's your clue and your connection, that's what you want to do for you. You can also just hold them. I'm sure I have a crystal nearby. I always do. Hold them if you're stressed, doing breathing exercises while you're meditating. But even if it's a crystal you're holding, make sure the place you put it at the end of the day or when you're not using it, same place every time. Keep it there. So you always know where it is when you want to go and use it. And this is actually incredibly helpful for regulating your nervous system. One of the easiest ways, in addition to carrying your crystals to work with them, is to meditate with them. And it's simply holding it. There's no right way to do this. There's so many right ways. And feeling into what works for you. Some people, if you have a larger crystal, you might set it right in front of you during meditation. Some people want to hold it. Some people find a little movement in meditation helps them with the crystal and then connecting into the crystal's energy. So there's lots of right ways to do it. There's no one right way. Other great places, if you're not going to physically meditate or carry them in you or on you, in your bra or on you, placing them in spaces where you are, your desk at work, near your bed. If you've been having like a lot of bad dreams, maybe you want to place some black tourmaline underneath your bed. See if that helps with that. So placement can have a role in it as well. Crystals in your environment can really act as those visual reminders of intention, calm, and mindfulness. The most important thing when you are starting to work with crystals is to keep it simple, okay? Do not stress about this too much. I know those beautiful grids on Pinterest look amazing. You don't need to try to make those elaborate grids. Start small and work your way up because the most important thing I want you to do is just use your crystals. Use them. You probably got them sitting around your house if you're watching this, and notice these things. Notice how you feel when you work with them, whether they help you slow down or feel more grounded. And then another bonus, what thoughts or emotions come up. You don't need to force meaning or sensation. If something doesn't feel supportive, don't use it anymore. If it doesn't resonate, set it aside. That's okay. The main thing, the more you start working with crystals, you're going to develop your own practice, your own ways of doing things. I am not a rule person. I'm not going to be up here saying you got to wear your crystal bracelet on your left hand side if you want to, if that's your receiver hand. No, wear it on whatever side you want. Put it on your ankle if you want. It's okay. It's all about that intention piece. That's where, for me, the rules, I'm not a fan of the rules. Everything I tell you here is my practice. And feel free to make it your own. You don't need rigid beliefs. You don't need expensive collections. You don't need perfect practices. The best thing I can say is it starts with curiosity and it grows through your intention. And it works best when you stay grounded in your personal practice. So always remember you can start with my offerings as a guide, but I find the real power is when you make it your own. You start recognizing what works best for you. Here at That Crystal Show, we explore crystals, science, and the metaphysical in a way that's grounded in honesty and curiosity. You don't have to believe everything. You just have to be open to learning something new. So if you're here for the geology, the ritual, or the deeper meaning, go ahead, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. I'm Bella from Bella Luna Crystals, crystal seller and crystal practitioner, and I'm really glad you're here. Have a great day.